start, a foreign tycoon with space on their wall and business to do in this country. The Biden White House isn't the first to deal with family ethics questions, as we know, whether it was Jimmy Carter's brother Billy and his famous beer, or Donald Trump's best-known White House senior advisors, his daughter and son-in-law, a daughter who was part of the administration and who got more than a dozen patents from China while the U.S. negotiated a trade deal. Well, for the record, profiting off the presidency when you're a member of the first family is always risky business. The White House press secretary says Hunter Biden, quote, has the right to pursue a new career. But it is fair to ask, would this art fetch hundreds of thousands of dollars if the name Biden wasn't attached to it? It doesn't take an art critic to know when something can come off as a bad look. Well, just ahead, the CDC says it's back to school in the fall, but are students adequately protected if vaccines aren't mandatory?
I'm Nick Robertson, close to the border with Gaza. This is CNN.
To understand Italy, you need to look at the food. The first thing that strikes you about Milan is its dynamism. No wonder espresso was invented here. Up here in the north, forget about pasta and pizza. This is the land of rice and polenta. Cheers. And olive oil plays second fiddle to butter. I love compacto. Jesus. I hate to say it, but it needs more butter.
Stanley Tucci searching for Italy tonight on CNN.
I realized the depth of human capacity, particularly in the African jurisdiction where we operate from, and most of the time we found that we never employed women into our business. And by setting targets and driving that by saying when women come on board, they need to be included. And the only way to include them is making sure that the culture is right. Because you can bring people on board, but if you're not ensuring that the culture is conducive for them to stay, they won't stay. And that's what has really been something that we've embraced and we've driven very hard, and we are measuring it. And we put it even on our scorecard to ensure that when we employ people, there is a percentage of women that we target. Because you can imagine if we were just just male of a particular hue, and how many opportunities we'll miss.
making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels. Connected to your world.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
The #1 women's tennis player in the world held on for her first ever Wimbledon title today. Australia's Ashley Barty showing off her trophy after defeating the Czech Republic's Karolina Pliskova. Neither woman had ever been to a Wimbledon final before. It's been nearly 45 years since that happened. Barty is also the first Australian woman to take home a Wimbledon title since 1980.
Right now, people who've gotten the doses of Pfizer, the prime and the boost, as well as the prime and the boost of Moderna, or a single dose of J&J, do not need to get a boost right now.
It is not unusual for immune responses after vaccination to wane over time. Does it remain above a level which we need to protect people?
This statue is finally being surrendered. We're one small step closer to a more perfect union.
To the young people out there, I hope that this empowers you to speak up on the issues that matter and to take charge in your own cities and communities.
In just hours, entrepreneur Richard Branson hopes to become the first person to ride a self-funded rocket into suborbital space.
I've had to wait almost a lifetime to be able to go into space. Hopefully we can speed that process up for many, many others.
I'm Pamela Brown in Washington. Welcome to our viewers in the United States and around the world on this Saturday. You are in the CNN newsroom. 4 straight days with more than 20,000 new COVID cases each day as the highly contagious Delta variant gets an even firmer foothold in the United States. More than half of all new American cases are linked to that variant, the Delta variant. This all comes at a time of confusion over boosters. Earlier this week, Pfizer said we may need them, but within hours, strong pushback from both the CDC and the FDA saying we don't need to worry about boosters right now. Now, adding to all these questions, some say it's time to talk making vaccines mandatory, but some major unions are saying no, including America's largest healthcare union, Service Employees International, along with the New York State Nurses Association and the Powerful Communications Workers of America. This is also a huge question for many school systems across the country as they are poised to start the new school year within weeks in some areas of the country. The CDC is out with new guidance saying last year's empty classrooms won't do. In-person schooling must be a priority this fall, regardless of whether mitigation efforts like ventilation and student spacing can be implemented. And they're urging vaccinations for everyone who is eligible, but stop short of saying they should be required. The nation's largest teachers union voted against mandatory vaccines, and so did its New Hampshire chapter. The president of that chapter, Megan Tuttle, joins me now. Thank you so much for joining us, Megan. Nice to see you. So why not back a mandate if it will protect the health of teachers and students, especially those who can't get a vaccine for health or age reasons?
Thank you. A mandate, I think, and we believe, is going just a little bit too far. New Hampshire right now has about 60% of its adult population vaccinated, and about 65% have at least one dose. If you put the vaccinations back, with all the other mitigation procedures that we've been recommending and advocating for all along, hand washing, proper cleaning techniques, proper ventilation, mask wearing for those unvaccinated, at this point, we really don't feel that a mandate is actually in the best interest of New Hampshire educators or the parents, right now for them to choose. Some are going to not want to get the vaccination for medical reasons. Some are not going to want to get it for religious reasons. And at this point, we really need to be letting the locals decide what's going to be best for them and their communities.
And as we know, there can be vaccine mandates with exemptions for health reasons or for religious reasons. But why do you think it goes a step too far? Because there are other teachers unions that also, there's been a divide, frankly, among teachers unions. Some that say there shouldn't be a vaccine mandate and others that say there should be. I mean, this is from the University of Indiana. This is, of course, a university, but the president of that school said this is saving lives. It's as simple as that, talking about the vaccine and the mandate, and it will enable us to have a normal fall semester. So why is it a step too far?
You know, we've been pretty good in New Hampshire recently with numbers of COVID cases, even with the Delta variant and everything else that's coming along. We were able to open up the schools, and the local districts with the educators and the administrators in the spring had worked together to make sure that schools could reopen. So we've been open, you know, for a little bit at this point. We are looking forward to reopening in the fall fully. And we just don't feel a mandate is really in the best interest of New Hampshire educators or the students at this point. We need to keep going along with all the other mitigation procedures. When you look at the vaccination, that's more medication than it is the mitigation. If you put everything together, we feel that, you know, very strongly that we can reopen, we will reopen, and we can do so safely.
So I want to ask you, because ironically your teachers union, like many others, actively pushed for teachers to be at the front of the line when shots were first made available. In January, you yourself said getting teachers vaccinated was the only way schools could safely reopen. How does then voting down mandatory vaccinations square with that?
So we were advocating for the vaccination to be available for the educators to get it when it first came out, and that didn't happen in New Hampshire. We were placed lower on the list than we felt we should have been. We've always advocated that vaccination be made available, but we've never advocated that the vaccination should be mandated. So it should be there, and we do have a large percentage and a large number of educators who are getting vaccinated. But to make it mandatory,
do you know the percentage?
I know that in New Hampshire, I don't have the exact percentage of the educators, but I know that in New Hampshire we have close to 60% of adults fully vaccinated, as well as close to 65% with at least one dose. So if you add in that second dose by the time school starts, things should be a lot better. In the spring, when the vaccination was made available to educators, most school districts in the state by May had already had plans because of the number of educators that they had in their districts vaccinated to be fully reopened. So the administrators feel really safe about this. The educators are feeling better about this. And so with the CDC guidance that we've been following all along and we've been advocating to follow along here in New Hampshire, we feel it's okay not to have to mandate something where we really need it to be left at the local level. We still need that flexibility of being able to decide what's best for the locals.
So places like Chicago, they want a goal. They don't have a mandate, but their goal is 80% of students 12 years of age and older vaccinated before October 1st. Does the New Hampshire Teachers Union support something like that?
We don't have a goal that a certain percentage should be vaccinated at this point. You know, I think Chicago versus the schools in New Hampshire are a little bit different. New Hampshire schools, the size obviously varies throughout the state, but I feel like a lot of New Hampshire, we have a lot more flexibility in keeping the 3-foot distancing. You know, we've shown that kids are okay wearing masks and that they can do it, and they do it easily. So having the non-vaccinated wearing the masks is another. We've been looking at the HVAC systems and the air purification to make sure the airflow is good. Keeping up all those other mitigation procedures is going to be what's really important in this, not mandating that somebody get a vaccination that they might object to for, personal, medical, or religious reasons.
Okay, Megan Tuttle, thank you very much for coming on and sharing the perspective from the New Hampshire Teachers Union. We do appreciate it. And my next guest has a different point of view, I would say, on this topic. CNN medical analyst Dr. Lena Wynn, former health commissioner of Baltimore, joins me now. Welcome to you. First, let me get your reaction to Megan Tuttle's arguments against mandating vaccines for eligible teachers and students, Dr. Wynn.
Well, I think it's important for us to take a step back and talk about why it is that we get vaccinations in the first place. Because I think somehow there has been this understanding that vaccination is just about you. And yes, it's true. Vaccination, of course, protects the individual very well against getting COVID-19 and getting severely ill. But we also get vaccinated to protect people around us. So because we know that there is a risk of breakthrough infection, so even if you're vaccinated, you could still get infected. It's the safest thing that's there is for everyone around you, even if you are vaccinated, to also be vaccinated as well. And so this is the reason why you're seeing hospitals, for example, mandate vaccines for their employees, because we don't want to be infecting patients. We're seeing colleges and universities begin to mandate vaccines because they want to have a normal school semester. They don't want to have masks and distancing in their classrooms. And so I actually don't really disagree with your previous guest that if you want to keep up all these other mitigation measures, fine, don't require vaccinations. But I think a lot of people would not want to have masks and distancing anymore in classrooms. And one way to get to that point is for everyone to be vaccinated who's eligible.
How much protection does the vaccine give you, though, over being unvaccinated and wearing a mask? Because that was one point that she had brought up.
Yeah, and I think she makes a very good point. I do think that masks protect the wearer as well as others around them very well. And so I think it is a reasonable choice to say, if you're not going to be vaccinated, you have to keep on wearing a mask. My concern, though, is that there will be people who don't want to be vaccinated and are not going to be wearing a mask. Usually those two at this point go hand in hand. There is actually one other thing that maybe we haven't talked about yet, and that is having an opt-out of testing. So I think it's reasonable to say teachers don't have to be vaccinated, but if you're not vaccinated, you should go through, let's say, twice weekly testing, or if you're in an area of very low community spread, maybe once weekly testing. I think that's reasonable because ultimately the goal is not to compel people to do something they don't want to do, it's to keep everybody around them safe too.
Well, I want to ask on the broader scale about vaccine mandates. It's something you've been outspoken about. You believe that President Biden needs to make a case for mandating vaccines. Tell us more about that position, why that is.
Look, I'm not saying that the president or the federal government needs to be mandating vaccines at all, but rather that there are so many individual employers, workplaces that want to mandate vaccines in order to keep their employees safe. I mean, think about it as if you're coming into work and you're being asked to sit shoulder to shoulder to many other people in a crowded conference room without good ventilation. Even if you are vaccinated, if you're living in an area with high rates of COVID-19 spread,